Couple seconds to spare today.
It
happens once a month. Hey, Mike. Welcome to the crowd.
Good evening. I would like to call the February 13th, 2013 meeting of the Zoning Commission to order. Will you call the roll, please?
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Casper?
Here.
Mrs. Himmeline?
Here.
Mr. Epstein?
Here.
Mr. Kriege?
Here.
And we'll note that Mr. Sabo, the alternate, is here as well.
Thank you. We are going to put off approving the minutes until the next meeting. There were a couple changes that needed to be made, so we'll do that at our March meeting. And we have no old business, and we have one item of new business, which is a zone change request from A3 Agricultural to R4 Residential PUD for a property located at 3859 and 3901 McCord Road. I know there are many people here, obviously tonight, more than normal, who are interested in this. So I think what we will do is we'll start with sort of a general set of information from Darryl. We'll let the people who are requesting the zone change, I assume they're here, offer any comments that they wish to offer, and then we'll open it up to any public comment. I will ask you, when you make your public comments, you'll have to come up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record, please. And we'll ask you to keep it 3-4 minutes because obviously if a lot of you want to speak, if it's a repetition on a theme, we'll ask you I support the person ahead of me or whatever. But we'll be happy to hear from all of you, and then the Zoning Commission will discuss the issue. So that is sort of our process, I think, here tonight. So the first thing I would note is that the members of the Commission have received multiple documents from Darryl. Among them, a set of documents from both the Lucas County Planning Commission and the Savannah Township Zoning Office. And those documents will become part of the record of this. And unless I am incorrect, I believe both of those documents have recommended approval of this zone change.
Correct.
So Darryl, if you want to add any comments about either the Savannah Township Zoning Staff Report or the Lucas County report, like I said, both of those have recommended the zone change request and are in the hands of the members of the Zoning Commission. So Darryl?
Subject property is at 3859 and 3901 McCord. It's zoned A3 agriculture and is 3.9 acres. The applicants requested the zone change from A3 agriculture to R4 PUD for the purpose of constructing an upscale 34-unit multifamily residential development. The site consists of 2 parcels, each with a single-family residence, and is bounded on the north by large lot residential and a church. Commercial uses are to the northeast, while single-family, mostly medium-density residential properties border the site to the east, south, and west. The proposed development would consist of 2 5-unit and 2 6-unit one-story multifamily dwellings with private entrances, individual driveways, and 2-car garages for each unit. A 5th building located in the approximate center of the site would be 2 stories and contain 12 units. Again, these would have private entrances and individual driveways, but with single garages. The site would be accessed by 1 private drive ending in a T-type turnaround. Limited additional on-street parking would be available on the access drive. Section 2002 of the Savannah Township zoning regulation states that a maximum of 40% of the gross parcel acreage shall be devoted to coverage by buildings, structures, street, driveway, or parking. The latest revision of the proposed plan meets this requirement at exactly 40%. Section 2002 continues, a minimum of 15% of the gross parcel acreage, none of which shall be part of any yard, shall be allocated to usable, accessible, and consolidated common open space, which may include recreational areas, ponds, detention, retention areas, or natural areas. The plan as proposed exceeds the requirement with 21.9% open space. The applicants will place privacy fencing and a row of arborvitae behind the T-type turnaround and screening for the adjacent single-family residences. The landscape plan also presents a buffer of spruce and maple trees around the perimeter of the site, and the applicants have indicated that they plan to keep as many of the existing trees on the site as possible. These will also be located mostly around the periphery of the site. The applicants have also stated they are willing to work with neighboring residents regarding landscaping and fencing. As noted in the Lucas County Plan Commission staff report, the Sylvania Township Land Use Plan 2007 update designates the area of the west side of McCord Road, south of Sylvania Avenue, and north of Sparrow Hill Road as neighborhood mixed use and for transitional uses. The Sylvania Township zoning resolution defines mixed-use development as a tract of land or buildings or structures developed for two or more different uses, such as but not limited to residential, office, manufacturing, retail, public, or entertainment. Transitional zoning is defined as a change in the zoning classification of land to a classification permitting development that is less intensive or dense or more intensive or dense, such as from single family to multifamily to commercial and the opposite, step down or step up zoning. Multifamily construction is rebounding from the recent recession better than any other real estate construction, with apartment occupancy rates around 95% nationally. The trend towards renting is expected to continue for many years as the economy improves and as our society ages. According to the Census Bureau, 32% of households in Ohio were renter-occupied in 2011, and in Lucas County, the percentage was 37.6%. In Sylvania Township, including the city of Sylvania, the renter-occupied rate is 21.7%. Staff recommends approval of the zone change from A3 to R4 for these properties, as it is consistent with the objective of the most current land use plan for this area. This proposed development is the quintessential transitional use, a medium-density, multifamily residential development, forms the perfect buffer between the single-family uses to the south and west and the current and probable future commercial uses to the north and northeast. Additionally, this new multifamily development would facilitate the township's need for upscale rental units to meet current rental trends and the demographical changes of the future.
Are there any questions for Gerald right off the top before we let the public make any comments? I had two questions, and
Sure.
just if we can answer that right off the top. Is all the land that's sort of the L-shaped piece that, isn't we're talking about developed, does that all belong to the church? Because it looks like there's a house right next to the church parking lot.
Yes.
That isn't part of the plan here?
Yeah, there's a house and an empty lot between the church and the site,
Right.
proposed site.
But it was confusing to me on some of the site maps whether that, I know the barn up on the hill and obviously the baseball diamond probably belonged to the church, but I didn't know if the whole L
Yeah, it's,
belonged to the church.
yeah, there's one house,
Okay, so that house does belong to a private owner?
right,
Okay.
trying to find a
Yeah, that's-
slide that has a
he found
good
it,
picture.
just so we can clarify that. And then, the house that's to the south, it looks like there's a building in the back of that house. Do we know what that is? Because I know I kept looking at the picture and trying to figure out what was in the back there.
That one
Yeah,
right there?
that one.
I believe that's a pole barn or a garage.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify what we were looking at in the pictures. Are there any other questions?
I have a question.
Well, can you wait?
Oh,
Any other questions here from the board? Zoning Commission. Okay, if the people who are requesting the zone change would like to address us. Again, state your name and your address.
Don Ulrich, 8057 English Garden Court, Maumee. Most of you don't know me. I'm a developer from down in the Monclova area, done primarily high-end single-family subdivisions, done some multifamily. I'm a partner with Mike Hodgenacki and M&D Holdings. I was going to go through the whole entire project, but Daryl just did a great job. I'll add a few things. Essentially, we agree with Daryl that it is a great transitional use. We've tried to do it in a manner that has a minimal impact with ranch units as opposed to, all 2- and 3-story, which quite often you'll see in multifamily. We plan to essentially landscape the site like crazy, literally. Full sprinkler system, front, back, everywhere. Up along McCord Road will be definitely impact landscaping. All my subdivisions in Monclova, I've always felt that first impression is everything. So for McCord Road, it'll look knocked down, good. This isn't a multifamily, slam them up, rent them for $600 and let them leave junk everywhere. We're anticipating probably $1,200 a month, high-end rental. As far as traffic and parking, those issues have been brought up. Traffic was discussed briefly by Keith Early, the Lucas County engineer, at the Plan Commission hearing, and he stated that this would have a very, very, very minimal effect on the recently improved McCord Road. Number of cars per day, I think 14 to 17,000 or something, wasn't it, Daryl?
In 2007, it was 12,600.
And it's probably way greater than that today, so.
Right.
It's very, very, very minimal impact-wise, traffic-wise. We did meet with the neighbors a couple weeks ago. Mike and I and about 10 or 11 individuals. We did agree to landscaping additionally wherever they would choose to provide extra screening and extra privacy, sections of fencing to their desire around the perimeter. We intentionally put the 2-story building to the north up against the church property such that they would only back up to ranch units. Really, I guess that's all I have. You can answer questions now, or you'll have more later, I'm sure.
I have one question. I know out of the Lucas County Planning Commission, they recommended approval based on the fact it was consistent with the township land use plan, and it would provide a transitional use between more intense commercial development and the single-family residential, but then they also talked about 31 conditions that they recommended. Are we satisfied that all of those 31 conditions can be met?
Yes, we at the Plan Commission agreed to all the conditions.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions from members of the Zoning Commission?
I have a question. What's the range of rentals for these units?
It would be right around $1,200 a month.
Okay, $1,200 a month for all units in all locations here?
They'll vary somewhat. The one building that's 2 stories, essentially those units all have a 1-car garage as opposed to the other ranch buildings have a dedicated 2-car garage. So it would probably be in the $1,050 to $1,100 range for the 2-story, 12 units. And probably
We're talking, what, $1,000 to $1,250 for all, for these units?
Probably average about $1,200, probably $1,250 to $1,275 for a ranch unit with the 2-car garage.
Okay.
And this type of unit's being very successful in Perrysburg already at that rate.
Where in Perrysburg are you referring?
Off Roachton Road, they're building a bunch of them, very similar units. There's a big group of them that was just built in Monclova Township. You can see them when you drive down 20A, kind of near Strayer Road. So it's a very popular concept. They definitely are, quite easy to rent.
Thank you.
On the site plan, on the T street, the turnaround at the end of the street,
Yes.
how far is that? It's such fine print. Is that 17 feet, 14 feet from the next property line behind it to the west? 14 feet.
14, Darrell, did you say?
14.
Well, it looks like
14,
it.
okay, thank you. And that's where Darrell was reading that we're planning on putting a privacy fence and row of arborvitae for a continuous block along there. And I do believe there's some existing large trees right in that area that we're planning to keep too. They're like right on the property line.
Does the landscape plan that we received, does that reflect the agreement you came to with the neighbors, or is that the original landscape plan?
No, we literally told them that we would give them the ability on landscape day to tell us what they want to add, you know.
Okay.
Told them as long as they're reasonable. I mean, I think, you know, it's reasonable to provide a full blockage, you know. Not all the way around the project.
Right, I got that.
Full blockage, yeah.
Yeah.
The fire department was okay with that turnaround on the end of that street. I see in their notes, they were only concerned about suppression.
Darrell, did you get any comments? I didn't see any from the
No,
fire department.
no, I haven't.
I mean, it's designed lengthwise based on the Lucas County standard for a fire truck and a school bus. Not that a school bus would probably go down the road, it'd probably stop.
My only concern when I see things like this and then landscaping at the end, you know, people forget when they engineer these things to design snow load. Obviously, a street like this, you have to maintain all the snow
Yeah,
into this
it's all-
site.
it's all
And then you
private.
plant a bunch of bushes at the end of it. There's nowhere for the snow to go if there were a fire or a truck to get there. The snow has to come off of the street, and you don't have a lot of open space
We should be able to push it north and south to the ends.
off the end where there
Yeah.
would be no landscaping, it would be
Right.
grass.
Right, right. There'll be open areas at both the north and south end.
What is the fence along the back? What kind of fence you going to put in?
Yeah, we discussed at are you talking about up against the neighbors or at the end of the street? Privacy fence is what's been discussed and what's shown in the landscape plan, such that it'll, you know, provide a blockage so headlights are not.
Wood fence, plastic, what?
Probably a vinyl fence. Primarily to prevent headlights from going down the street and into the neighborhood behind.
With the open space there on the south end of the middle of this project, was there another consideration to do something with that, or future plans, or just two open spaces there?
Now, as you can see from the landscape plan, we've got that just heavily landscaped. Our goal was to get some curvature in the road so that it just didn't look straight down the road. We worked with Darrell and John Nagy to get the curvature in the road, and it essentially created a situation where it was too shallow for a building anyway, and created a perfect open space location.
There's no plan for any additional building spaces, is that correct?
Yeah, they can't put any more buildings. They're at the maximum right now.
Yeah.
Right, they're at the 40% coverage right now.
What's the height of the fences that you're referring to?
At the end of the road, most of them are 6 foot. Could do 8 foot, you know. We'll take input from the neighbors as this project goes. If we get approval from you and from the trustees, we aren't going anywhere. You know, we both have a tendency to work with people. They want an 8 foot, we'll do 8 foot.
Any other questions from the zoning commission? Any other comments? Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, I'd like to add something regarding an 8-foot fence. In residential, 6 foot is the maximum, so they would need to get a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals to put an 8-foot fence up.
Good note. We'll open it up then for people to make comments. If you would again step to the microphone, if you'd state your name and your address. and we'll give you, 3-4 minutes apiece to make as many comments as you want. So who would like to go first? I assume you're here for a reason other than just to hear us talk. Go ahead.
I think everybody's concern is pretty much here. If we live in the neighborhood.
Name and address first, please.
Alan Christie, that's Christie, at 3845 Pepperwood Court. And everybody's concern, number one, is with apartments, or two-story apartments. Number one, lighting, brightness. The people directly behind are going to be definitely affected. They're going to want to move out. And it's just like a domino effect. It's going to affect the value of their houses, which is going to affect the value of my house, which, just look at dominoes falling. There's 800 houses. And they start to fall in value. That whole area is going to go down. It's all going to go down. Traffic coming out of there is going to be down. It's going to be a jam from Ford to everywhere else. It's adding, it's tough enough to drive up and down those roads right now, let alone adding the extra driveways, people coming and going at all hours of night. People, we moved there because it was a nice, fairly quiet neighborhood, not bright. We're not, the lighting from that place is going to be an annoyance to the people right behind it. An 8-foot fence for a 2-story building, and the lighting to go with it. 8-foot fence, they can't build one high enough. And I know there's ordinances, so the fence isn't going to be higher. It's going to affect everybody. It's definitely property values, everything are going down. They're not going to be able to control who comes and goes and who rents and who doesn't. And if you look around the town, you look around Toledo where they put up apartment houses and stuff, it has affected the neighborhoods because they're butting right up against it. Where I work, there's apartment houses across the street. It's affected that area, just up a couple blocks, same thing. People behind it, down the streets. It's between traffic, lighting, a nuisance as far as noise. We didn't move in there, and our property values have gone down enough. Everybody's suffering that. It hasn't bounced back. Our taxes haven't gone down. Okay, the taxes are going up, property value is going down. Now, to lose more on our houses, and that's exactly what's going to happen. I understand he's in the business, he needs to make money, or he wants to make money. But for them to make money putting these up, now take 800 houses that are going to lose money. It's just the economics. It's really going to hurt an awful lot of families.
Thank you. Who else would like to make a comment? Name and address.
Douglas Tussin, T-U-S-S-I-N-G, 3839 Eagleview Circle. We came out here 20 years ago from Toledo. I was born and raised in Toledo. And we had a nice friendly community. We had open spaces. Our back we had raccoons, possums, deer. It was really nice. The field behind us, which is still there right now, our kids play football. Little kids flew kites. It was a lot of activity. The person that owned it says she would, while she was living that would be just for that purpose. And then she passed away, and her son took it. He didn't respect her wishes for that. It's just a shame that we have open space like this, and now we're going to put something else on it. Savannah Township has changed a lot over the years, and they stopped putting the box companies up like Lowe's and Giant Eagle. It was nice, but then they kept building and building, and now there is no open territory. This is about the last in Savannah Township. Now, I don't follow anybody, I don't make allegations. These are nice people, the builders. But it's just, man, there's another open space, and this can be like Toledo. It's going to be driving from downtown Toledo off to Zavania Township, it's going to look the same the whole way. And is that what we really want? That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Isaac Villa. My wife and I, Susan, lived at 3833 Eagle View Circle, which on your map kind of backs up to that bottom left building. With some of the concerns already been stated, without getting repetitive, one of the things that we're concerned with is the area from Sylvania to McCord is a fairly high traffic area, and I know we can throw car numbers out. I leave for work a little before 7:30 every morning. I come back home a little after 6. I sit and wait substantial amounts of time. We have one entrance and exit for 34 units of however many cars are going to be using that. That to me shows an increase in traffic. And not from an inconvenience for my commute, which really isn't that long to begin with, but from a safety standpoint. We have children that attend Stranahan. We have people in our neighborhood that attend some of the junior highs and then over to Southview. There's heavy foot traffic through there, not only to the schools for kids, but also over to Olander Park, which we're pretty close to as well, and right over to the north. So I have concerns from a safety standpoint of increasing traffic with one entrance and one exit at that facility. Another thing, and just to answer the question that somebody had asked a minute ago, that extra site, the open space area, they talked about landscaping. He did say, yeah, couldn't put another building there, but there was mention when we sat down with them of putting pavers and making that a parking area. So there is interest in adding that, using it from that end. They can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was one of the things stated. In the spot where I'm at, the other concern I have, you can see Eagle View kind of gives that little curve there. We're 30 feet off of the proposed property line where the first building would start. So building 30 feet, my property, about another 35 feet from my house, right at my back door. So we're looking at about 60, 65 feet from me reaching over and shaking hands to whoever's living there. I don't know that you can landscape much in 30 feet to provide enough density that would provide enough privacy or cover in that area. I'm not sure.
How far is your house? I mean, you're not much farther side to side than, in his defense, than 60 feet either, you know what I mean?
From the neighbors to either side of me?
Absolutely. You're maybe 30 feet side to side.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's farther, actually.
Sure, from a single-family residence as opposed to a multifamily facility. So, and that's the end of it. I would point to. And then the other concern that I had with the parking thing, real quick. Limited parking in the actual unit that's proposed. So if you have friends, family over, if you have visitors, that's a straight shot, 60 feet through my backyard to park in the circle where I live. We already kind of get used as a parking lot occasionally when people are, Olander's pretty popular when it comes to Halloween time. You can see Farmbrook covered with cars walking through there to use that so they don't have to pay to park. I see our circle and then subsequent into Pepperwood there getting used as a parking lot when we can just cut right through there. So those are kind of some of the concerns I have. And again, as Doug mentioned earlier, we see an increase in traffic in the area. Lourdes has become from college to university. We see increased traffic flow through there, which I love to see people. I'm just concerned about what that higher density and that size property brings to the table. So thank you for your time, guys.
Well, okay, fine.
Can we keep going?
We can keep going.
Great, thank you.
State your name and your address.
Hi, I'm Jeanette Rabatich, and I live at 3830 Pepperwood Court with my husband, John. Our children are in college, so they're not at home, except for during the summer. We live kind of at an odd angle. We're a pie, and the T is going to end in our backyard, which is not really the concern that I have. The concern that I have is that McCord Road has become a pass-through between Brent and Central Avenue. And we have not properly, as a township or as a city, addressed that dilemma. And what happens between 3:30 and 6 o'clock every day is that we cannot get out of our neighborhood. I left my house to come here at 5:24 and arrived at this building at 5:45. And the reason is because I couldn't get out of my neighborhood. What I have to do to get out of my neighborhood is go to Sylvania Avenue, and then I have to sit at the traffic light at Sylvania Avenue, usually 3 to 4 to 5 lights. And so had we addressed that when we did the remodel of our streets, I would say that we have the capacity for 34 apartments that will be very well built by Hodgenecki Development. But we didn't address that. And recently, we agreed with Lord's University for a new development at the end of Brint and McCord, which will house the student athletic facilities for Lord's University. What that means that on any given Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night, when they're hosting basketball games or softball games or any other kind of game, that we now again are the traffic flow from Central Avenue to the corner of Brint and McCord. And I think that that is our biggest concern as a neighborhood, is that we've not identified from a township perspective how we're going to keep our neighborhood safe with all of that additional traffic flow. It's not about today, it's about the future. And I think as we've been building in Sylvania Township, we only look for today. And I would ask you as a zoning commission to consider the future, because you have a lot going on McCord Road that certainly needs to be addressed. Even at Waterford Bank, you've gone from about 15 cars a day to about 60. Go count. It's true. And it's very, very difficult for us to get out of our streets. I don't know how the people at Huntington Bank get out of their location where they're employed. And now we have Planet Fitness. And today, on my way here, I just glanced over, and that entire parking lot was filled with people who are working out on the corner of Sylvania and McCord. So I think you have a lot going on that corner, and I would just ask you to take a real good look at that before you add 34 more houses, because I think from a safety perspective, we have some serious issues on that corner. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Johnny Vola. I'm at 3764 Wild Pheasant Lane. My question is, if this gets approved, if you change the zoning for this site, how many other sites on McCord Road are you going to change the zoning for? There is about 5 to 7 years ago, there was a gentleman here before you guys to do an apartment complex just down the street from there, just past Wild Pheasant. And that was denied. It was turned down. If you approve this, are you going to approve somebody to come in and do that site too? And then if that site's approved, then another site down the street, is that going to be approved? So is McCord Road going to be all apartment buildings?
I'd like to address that for a minute.
You and I were here.
There. I believe that was down by the bike trail.
Right.
And if I recall correctly, that was actually a density issue as to why that was turned down.
So will it, if somebody comes up again, will it be turned down again?
Well, again, this is relying on memory of the time, which was a few years back, but I believe the issue, if it were not in the right density range, certainly. I think that's one of the things that this board has to consider, is that we look to make sure that the project fits well within the range of the code
In the land use plan?
and the land use plan. And sometimes that changes. The land use plan, if it's consistent with that corridor and the project fits within, all the specifications, then.
My fear is just that, as busy as McCord Road is right now, and Jeanette had, she spoke very plainly about the issues that we have around this area. And my issue is if we allow one person, I think it's just going to keep going. The widening, the turn lane that we've got now into Sparrow Hill in the Farmbrook subdivision helped a little bit. But from Sparrow Hill up to Sylvania Avenue, that's still basically 2 lanes. And then you're going to put another 34-family dwelling. That's going to back up traffic there too. And Jeanette's right. We have to wait 10 minutes sometimes just to even pull out of our street to get onto McCord Road, especially during rush hour. So I worry that if this goes through, that more of the same is going to go through on McCord Road, and it's going to make our lives in Farmbrook more difficult. Thank you.
I have a statement. There are still 8 trips a day for one unit, right? I think it's 8.
I've heard that number. It seems high to me, but yes.
That's 272 trips per day for this whole place if it's filled.
And how many trips did you say back in 2007? That intersection?
12,600.
We all would probably agree it's higher now.
I would say it's probably 14,000, 15,000 now.
So again, I certainly understand and can agree with the fact that it will increase traffic, but when you look at a percentage standpoint of what we have already, another 200 or so is probably not going to make a significant impact to the overall of what's already there.
Before we start that discussion, let's finish hearing from anybody else who would like to speak.
Good evening. My name is John Majdalani. I live at 3856 Pepperwood Court, and that T that's going to be built will be 12 feet from my property line. But I'm here to talk about the traffic. Like coming here, making a left from Sparrow Hill on the court, I lost track of time quite a bit. But my other concern is when I go to work and I make a right on the court from Sparrow Hill and then hit Central, take the left lane to get on the expressway, and at 7:30, usually it's 20, 30 cars in front of me, and this is no exaggeration. And one time at 8 o'clock, because we started working later, I don't know, I gave up trying to make a left turn on Central. So what I'm saying is this 34 units might just make it, if anybody who wants to go to work and take Central Avenue may have to wait, who knows, 15 minutes, and I don't think that's an exaggeration. Thank you, that's all I have to say.
Yes.
Say one more thing.
Sure. Just restate your name and address.
Alan Christie, 3845 Pepperwood Court. Our area it's kind of like a road and track if you looked at the road of Pepperwood Court and Sparrow Hill. We get a lot of cut-throughs now where they're shortcutting the light. Say they're headed north on McCord. They'll cut through Sparrow Hill, which turns into Pepperwood Court, and then turn left on Hawkston and weave through the rest of the neighborhood to get out on Sylvania Avenue. They try to avoid the light. But these people that are cutting through aren't neighbors. I mean, there's a lot of that traffic, even at night. I mean, you can hear them, people going down the street. Because it weaves a little bit, they use it for a road course. They're flying. They're going 20 miles an hour. And they very seldom, coming from the other direction, Sylvania, do they stop, and I'm right on the corner of Hawkston and Pepperwood Court. They blow that stop sign just like it's not even there. When I had little kids, I used to stop people, and everybody thought I was nuts. And tell them, sorry, these little kids think that stop sign means you're going to stop as an adult. They don't. I mean, that area, we get a lot of traffic through. This is just going to increase it on top of that. Not just the residents, but people visiting. People saying, oops, they've been there once before, it's too slow to go. You know, on McCord, we'll just cut through from Sylvania, swing around, and enter that way. I mean, people always try to find a shortcut. It's just adding more traffic to the neighborhood. And I mean, these people don't respect, there's little kids. Little kids can run out of anywhere. And I'm not kidding, on my street, it terrified me when my children were young. You know, I had no problem walking out and waving somebody down. It just blew a stop sign. You know, they're wheeling around or backing out of the driveway and making sure I'm in the street. And then they got to stop because they just rolled right through the stop sign. Little kids expect adults to drive properly. They don't go through that neighborhood. They weave through it now. Adding to it even more, you know, it's just chaos.
Well, okay.
Were you going to say something first?
Name and address.
Nicole Bollinger, 3916 Pepperwood Court. I wasn't sure if anyone mentioned about a bus being able to turn around in the T. I know they talked about a fire truck, if there's any children back there, would the bus be able to go back there? Or would they have to be picked up on the board? Does anybody know that?
I would say if a fire truck, if it meets the restrictions, then a school bus would also fit that same length in whatever the county's
Because they
code
can't
is.
back up, they have to turn around.
Well, the T, they would essentially pull into one end of the T, back up, and then turn back.
Yeah, they're not allowed to back up. They're not supposed to back up at all. So that was one concern that I had.
I doubt very much they'd even drive down the private road. If there are any kids there, they'd have to.
They'd pick them up at the corner.
And that's, now view is not horrible, but that would be a safety concern in my hand right there. Just one thing there. The international college students from Lourdes is kind of a concern of mine. If they're adding in a sports complex, they're going to be accepting international students. What's to keep those international students from being there? That would not be someone I would want living in my backyard. Safety issue for me is a huge thing as a mom. I wouldn't feel safe with my kids playing in our backyard. We're down a little bit, but we have Advent Lutheran's field. Like the ball field is right in my backyard. You walk up, it's right there, which I don't think that will be usable with that building so close to it anyhow. But we already have teenagers walking through our yard on occasion. With 34 extra families being there, my concern is that I would not feel safe letting my children play in the backyard. I do not have a fence. I really don't want a fence. And I would feel that that would affect me for sure, and all those that would be around us. They would cut through there to walk over to Old Ranger. So the safety is twofold for me, not only with the traffic, but the extra traffic walking through the neighborhood. I definitely would think that when I found the city's land use plan, which I at first didn't realize that they separated in 2007, it had stated very clearly that R4 was not compatible with R1. So I'm assuming that the township has pulled away from that, and so now you view that as being compatible with no buffer zone in between. And I definitely believe that property values would decrease, and that lost revenue from the property taxes may or may not be offset by increased revenue from the project. And ultimately, more people, and if he could not get the rent that he wanted from it, which is fairly high, I understand. But in the future, things might go back to the way they were. People may be wanting more homes again, which already looks like this year has been better for that in Sylvania Township, from what I just read that Darrell had listed on the website. And then they would have to lower the rent. And then I believe that would definitely even lower our value more. I have to ask you, if you were looking at this in your backyard, would you be happy? Would it be something that you would want to look out your backyard and see? For me, it doesn't affect me as much as some of the people that have it, like the Vias, right there, like 30, 60 feet from their back door. And for me, if I'm on my back porch, it's different than being side to side. Definitely. Your backyard is your private space. That's you. A little bit different from the side to side. That's all.
Thank you.
I would like to say something.
I think there's some other people in line first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize there was money on it. Excuse me. I should have turned it.
Name and address.
Hi, I'm Janice Krieger. I live at 3850 Pepperwood Court. I back up this right back to this complex, and I'm concerned about how close it is going to be for me. Right now, I have like total privacy in my yard, and I really enjoy that. I've been there a long time. It looks like a very nice complex. I don't know if there's a restriction as far as like, is this going to be like an adult community, like a certain age bracket that would be living there as opposed to just anybody with, you know, little kids and so on. Because now I'm also concerned, I didn't even think about this, with the noise and the lights flashing and all that is a very major concern to me now. And I can't say that I've been held back by the traffic so much because my hours are more flexible. I don't have to leave my home as most people do early in the morning and come back at 4:30 to 5, so I'm basically unaware of that problem. But unless they're going to build like a concrete boulder or something in back of my house or all along there, I mean, I don't know what kind of landscape they could put to keep any privacy back here. So those are my concerns.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I'm Annette Poloff, and I live at 3950 Pepperwood. And again, it doesn't concern us quite as much because we live at the far cul-de-sac near Sylvania, but Mr. Cricky mentioned that the space between the houses is a similar distance, but you have to remember that, like, we lived there 20 years, and so did a lot of these people that live there that are going to butt up against it. That wasn't there 20 years ago. It's something new to them. They're used to having that field behind them. It's really pretty, it's very nice and open, and I think if you could put yourself in their shoes, you know, it's nothing against the developer, but, you know, we've been there for 20 years, and it's a big change from that big open field. It's shady, it's nice back there, and, you know, the people that butt up there, they've always had a nice view in their backyard. And like she said, you know, she has young children, and she's not going to feel secure having her children out in the yard, and that's not really fair to people who've been there for years. So that was just my opinion.
Name and address.
Oh, yeah. My name is Greg Arnold. I'm an attorney, and I'm here tonight representing 20 neighbors and individuals, many of whom are contiguous to the proposed site. My business address is 5749 Park Center Court. That is in Sylvania Township. I also happen to be a resident of the township, and my home address is 4830 Country Walk Lane. If I might, I have some materials I'd like to have the board have and also to consider.
Make sure Gerald gets a copy, so it can be in the record.
Watch your step.
Yep, I'm going to go this way or I'll come crashing down. I'll give him that. And would you mind if I used your little pointer? Oh, that one. Great.
If you need a particular screen, just let me know.
that's the one I'd like. I brought some materials to put up on your board here, but the print that's up there is much better for my purposes, so I appreciate it. I would like to start even before the proposal that's being presented tonight, and that is, I'd like to start by discussing briefly Section 101 of the Township Zoning Code resolution, and it says, I'll just read the first sentence. This resolution is adopted for the residents of Sylvania Township for the purpose of protecting and promoting public health, safety, morals, comfort, conserving and protecting property. There are obviously many residents here tonight who feel strongly about this development. And what I'd like to suggest is that this whole development from Sylvania Avenue down McCord all the way through here is a prime piece of property in Sylvania Township. And while you may make a decision tonight or take this matter under advisement and make a decision in the next week or two, the decision that you make is going to impact and have a permanent effect on this prime piece of property. And while I have respect for the Plan Commission and their analysis, and Darrell and the zoning staff here at the township and their analysis, I'd like to suggest that the definition of a transitional development has been misapplied to this piece of property. Because as you can see, the site of the property, and it's marked as the site, is next to R1 single-family development. The transitional piece is not the piece on which these 34 units are proposed. The transitional piece is this piece right in here, because while it's only probable, and that's what the Sylvania Township zoning report said, it's probable there'll be commercial development. I'll be realistic and say along here, along Sylvania Avenue, and along this stretch of McCord, it's likely that someday there's going to be commercial development along that piece. If this piece is transitional in a more dense sort of way, this piece, if it's developed for residential housing, should be developed in a less dense way. And that's the emphasis I want to make tonight. The people that I represent are not opposed to any development, but as I discussed with the developers, the issue is whether this piece is appropriate to be an R4 PUD as opposed to an R3 PUD. Now what's the difference? The difference is that an R4 PUD permits 34 units to be built on the proposed site, 8.7 units per acre. An R3 PUD permits 7 units per acre. The difference in this case would be 34 units as proposed by the developer versus 28 units under an R3. Now the percentages that were discussed, the 40% and the 15%, those have been met, but those same requirements and percentages apply whether it's an R4, an R3, or an R2. And that becomes significant when you look at not this drawing, but then the drawing, and Darrell, if I might ask you to put up the proposed plat, or proposed plot drawing submitted by the developers. You could, okay, that's good. Look at how tight this is. Oops. Look at how tight this is. If you, I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but it's in your materials that I provide you a copy of this. Right here, the edge of these ponds, detention ponds, where, by the way, if there are any young kids that walk down this road to catch the bus, will be standing next to those detention ponds. The edge of that detention pond and the right-of-way of McCord Road is 5 feet. 5 feet as proposed. So you have 5 feet on the detention ponds, you have 14 feet from the end of the road, and as you look at how tightly compacted these in, it becomes apparent that 34 units are too many units on this size of space. And that's just not my opinion, but if you will look in the report, in the materials I provided, and specifically page 18, that is a letter from the Sylvania Township Fire Department. That letter was referenced in the Plan Commission analysis, and it was indicated by the Sylvania Township Fire Department that they strongly urge the developers to look into installing in these units residential sprinkler systems. Now, that's not required by the code, and it's likely, and probable, quite frankly, that the developers won't be doing that. I haven't had that discussion with them, I'm just surmising, but because it's not a requirement. But I spoke to Deputy Chief Mike Froelich about the word strongly urges. And I asked him, I said, do you have any language that you use that is of a higher concern than strongly urge? And the deputy chief said to me, no, I don't. We strongly do urge that. And I asked him why. And he said, because studies show that sprinkler systems cut down on the amount of damage and also increase the potential for to not be killed in a fire. But why is that significant in here? These buildings, as you can see, these two buildings near McCord Road, 5 units, then a 2-story, 12-unit building, and then back here 2 6-unit buildings. Now, with the density that's proposed, if a fire would start, there's a great likelihood of significant fire occurring. And that's why the chief says strongly urge the developers to look into this. If this were less dense, an R3, and it doesn't sound like a big difference between 34 and 28 units, but that's a significant reduction in the density of this project. And then so if you go back to the overhead, the Google, Darrell, if you would. Okay. You can see what this site, which hugs all this R1 residential, is not the transitional site. The transitional site, as I said, is the one next to it. And so I would urge this board to take a look at whether or not the density as proposed by the developers is appropriate in this circumstance. I don't disagree with Darrell's comment about quintessential transition. It may very well be a transition, but the point that my clients wish to make, and this may not be a general feeling, but the clients that I represent have a common purpose of stating that an R3 versus an R4 is the appropriate classification for this site because everyone recognizes that at some point it's going to be developed. But I would urge the board to look closely at the whole piece and how all the pieces, not only the present proposed site, but this key portion, and then what will probably be, but there's nothing on the table that I'm aware of, that is going to be developed at least in the short term. The other belief that I have is that either this board or the trustees, or in conversation with each other, indicate and express the belief that the commercial development would not go further south than Waterford Bank. If that is the case, then that also emphasizes the fact that this centerpiece is the key transitional piece and not the site that hugs the R1 residential. And particularly, again, when you know that those units back up 14 feet to the T road, 43 feet, I believe is the number, from the back of the units to the neighborhood. It's just absolutely too tight to be an appropriate use of this prime piece of property. And so we would urge the board to consider not approving the application for the R4, but rather give the developers the opportunity to amend to an R3. Thank you very much.
Can I ask just two questions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I
notice there's a lot of petitions in here.
Yes.
So the 20 homeowners, you represent their names are on the petitions, because I don't see a specific list of the 20.
I did not provide you with a specific list of
Okay.
20. I can do that if you want to
Okay.
see. Some of them are in there, some of them are not. But the list of my clients, whose purpose is to have this not be more dense than an R3, I can provide that.
And the signatures that I'm seeing on the various petitions basically encompass the broader neighborhood.
They encompass the immediate neighborhood and the broader neighborhood.
Okay.
And so obviously they are all residents of Sylvania Township, and the people for whom the zoning resolution was created to protect.
Any other questions, Mr. Arnold? Yeah.
Yes. Many of the arguments that we've heard tonight are the concerns, I should say. One is traffic. Okay. That seems to be a predominant issue. I don't see, tell me how the density might, by 6 units, how's it really going to have any significant impact on that? Two, when you do talk about the prime real estate there on the corner, and that is very likely to be in the future, as we're looking down the road here, we put that a little bit too, that's most likely going to be fairly commercial.
That assumes the church wants to move.
That's right.
I mean, the church has been there for 40-some years and hasn't wanted to move when given options.
Yep. Saying that's the case, if you're referring to a prime real estate location, what's to make us think that if that corner's prime and the lot with the ball field there, what's to say that may not even be more dense than what we're looking at here on this site? So this might continue to provide a nice buffer from that.
I'm sorry, I missed the point of the middle part being commercial?
The middle part. What's to keep that? If the corner becomes a commercial piece, what's to keep the one in the middle from
Well, I believe the land use, that's a good question, and I believe the land use plan does discuss, well, it actually argues with itself over what should McCord Road look like. Should McCord Road be residential, or should McCord Road develop commercially? And the land use plan talked about commercial development at Central and McCord, which of course is fully built out, and it talked about commercial development at the intersection, of Sylvania and McCord. But 2 points. One, and I think it's important, and it's in the Sylvania Township recommendation, and it's reality. No one knows for sure that that's going to turn commercial. And my experience with churches is that despite a declining membership, there are some members that say, we will carry on. And there's nothing to indicate that that property won't be a church property with a large front yard for the next 30 years. And I'm not sure that zoning decisions should necessarily be made on speculation as to what might occur. But if I am accurate, and this isn't a exchange, I understand that, but I believe I'm correct that if commercial is not to go beyond Waterford Bank, then this is the piece for transitional. And I'm not even arguing against the site, proposed site being transitional. I'm just indicating that the density at R4 for that piece of property is too great. I mean, detention ponds 5 feet, within 5 feet of the right-of-way of McCord Road. If it were a pond, And the detention ponds are primarily dry most of the time. But if it were a pond, your zoning resolution would require it to be 100 feet off the right-of-way of McCord Road. And so 5 feet sort of explains or portrays just how dense this is. If it were less units, it would allow it to open up. Is it much in the way of traffic change between 34 and 28? Not a significant change, but it would allow the site to open up and not to be so dense right next to R1, an R1 residential designation. And so would it step up from the site to Sylvania Avenue and the intersection of Sylvania and McCord? Possibly, but what I'm saying is look hard at this particular proposal and say, is this the appropriate development on what is a large and prime piece of property? And the zoning commission can be proud of what it does if it makes the right decision and considers not just this piece today, but in effect 3 pieces that are represented, and also taking into consideration maybe there's no need for transitional period because, as Mrs. Hemmeline indicated, it may be a church for a long time, and so that's just speculation. So I encourage
Your
you
concern
thoughtful
is primarily
consideration.
the density, not necessarily the concept of the apartments, but the density of the apartments.
The density is the issue, and the density is what this board, I believe maybe it was Mr. King, said that a development down the road was not approved because of a density issue. This truly is a density issue, and we're just asking for reasonable consideration of the development, not the elimination of it, just a lower density. And that will, whether it be fire issues, whether it be traffic issues, whether it be the closeness on several borders, it just allows it to expand and be a development that Sylvania Township can be proud of rather than look at as, boy, that shouldn't have happened that way. Thank you.
Can I ask a question of Daryl, and maybe John and I might have different memories of this?
Thank you.
My recollection is that the PUD by the bike trail was approved. The developer never got the financing together, and it was one of the properties that then we had to revert and take away the PUD designation because it hadn't been developed
Within a year.
within a year.
Yeah.
That tickles at my memory.
And that
I think it was
may vary,
approved
but I think-
by us,
I
and the
think-
developer never got it together, and it became one of those when we were trying to clean up the PUDs, that we then had to take it back to the original zoning, and now it's just a piece of property waiting for somebody to do something with, but it doesn't have the PUD designation on it anymore. It's back to whatever it was zoned originally.
It does seem to me that we were back and forth on it a couple of times, though, and one of the main issues was.
Yes, we considered it, because it was sort of a horse-shaped condo type, 6-8 condos sort of off of a horseshoe drive or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that was before I was here, or
Okay.
maybe right when I
That's
first started.
my recollection. I mean, I remember there was some discussion from the neighbors at that point in time about density. But I don't know. It's irrelevant at the moment, but it was along with the discussion which Mr. Arnold has brought up about is McCord, where does the commercial stop and residential is protected? And that's been obviously an extensive discussion over the years. It certainly was when Waterford was approved. Because actually, ironically, I remember some of the neighbors when Waterford was approved suggesting that they would rather have apartments there than that office building.
Be careful what you wish for.
I specifically remember that they were arguing they would much rather have apartments than an office building. So I don't know if you remember that or not. Anyway.
In any event, thank you for your
Okay.
time and consideration, and I would just finish by saying, do it right, don't do it fast.
Okay. And we have one more person standing back there.
Good evening, Madam and Gentlemen Trustees. My name is Brian Jones. I live at 3901 Wheatlands Road here in Sylvania, which is in Farmbrook. And although I think the traffic congestion issue is dispositive and it's extremely detrimental, it's just absolutely atrocious now, it would only be worse. I think that the declining property values issue is also critical. And I assume, I just was looking into this today, actually, so I don't know all that is going on, but I assume that the Lucas County Planning Commission and the Zoning Commission have approved the application. At this point now it's before you for final approval here. And I don't know if an expert has been hired to determine what, if any, effect this would have on the property values of all of us surrounding this site and the immediate neighborhood. There have to be experts that can render a report, market comparables. And I agree with everything Mr. Arnold said. The density issue is very, very important. I was thinking that it's a huge leap from A3 to R4. And I was thinking that it would be maybe a townhouse development here with 34 units, maybe each unit valued at between $150,000 to $200,000, and to improve the community here. Waterford Bank is a substantial building. It's upscale. It's bringing in revenues. If we're looking at short-term, it might bring the township short-term revenues, but if we have the property values of 800 homes going down 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now, 20, 25, 30, 40, 50, 100 years from now, the township will regret the decision of bringing in apartments. And at $1,200 a month, I'm just wondering, why are they going to be able to fill all those? What analysis, what studies have been done that would indicate that we have enough renters here that they would pay $1,200 without getting any equity investment in any kind of home or condominium ownership? And therefore, the owners might have to decrease the rent, which would decrease the values of all of our property. So I'm just wondering, with the overall cost of the proposed development, I'm sure an expert could be hired for a few $1,000s to give definitive answers to these questions to this respected board so that you can make an informed decision rather than just taking his word for things. And I'm not questioning his word, I'm just saying that my wife and I built our home in 1985. We kept it up. It's a wonderful R1 residential area, and we'd like to stay here in our retirement years. Thank you.
Somebody wanted to
Whatever, yeah, go ahead.
start my name right? Okay. My name's Matt Ubagi. I live at 3938 Pepperwood Court. And we just moved in here in August, and to be honest, if that had been there when we were making our decision, we probably wouldn't have bought the house. That's just, I just wanted to say that and have that in the conversation. And I think, there's no guarantee. Everybody said it all before, but the one thing I reiterate is that apartment buildings get sold, and it starts out at $1,200. The rent, they can't find enough people to keep up the rent. They sell it. Somebody else pays a little less. Again, I don't want to reiterate everything that everybody else has already said, but again, if that had been there when we were making our decision, we wouldn't have purchased it. So.
Good evening. My name is William Hutchison. I live at 6710 Sparrow Hill Road, obviously Sylvania, Ohio. I just wanted to indicate, actually I wanted to follow two attorneys, but the gentleman got in the way. But I just want to indicate that I support the neighbors, especially on the issue of density, especially on the issue of the traffic. I won't take any more of your time, and thank you very much for your consideration.
Does anybody else have anything additionally they want to say or need to say? Yes, go ahead. Your microphone? Oh, well, just a question.
For a question, when was the last traffic study performed on McCord Road? Am I led to believe it was 2007?
I do not know the answer to that.
That would be a
It's a
county
county road.
It's a
Yeah.
county road, so they would have that information.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Eldridge, do you have any comments you'd like to make in rebuttal, I guess?
I'll try to keep it brief, but just a few points. One gentleman had brought up the issue of street lighting. Essentially, what we have on the site plan is 5 street lights similar to any residential neighborhood. The street lighting will be no greater than what's in Farmbrook itself. As far as refuse...
We don't have street lights.
Oh, okay.
We're a streetlightless neighborhood on purpose.
We can do the same.
We voted it down now 5 times.
We can be no streetlights.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. I thought it was a Lucas County standard.
Well, and also, none of the lights allowed, I mean, Mike can read, it's not allowed to leave the site anyway, so there would have to be shields or shades that would prevent it from backyards, I mean, so.
Would all be site contained, yes. And a question before, not tonight, but about refuse. There will be no dumpsters. Each unit will have individual canisters in the garage, similar to a single-family neighborhood. As far as parking, all of the ranch units essentially have 2 spots in the garage and 2 spots in the driveways. They literally have 4 parking spots per unit. The 2-story building has 1 inside and 1 outside, so 2 per building. So we're way over the normal requirement with respect to parking. There would be overflow parking available between driveways, probably enough to accommodate 15 to 20 cars. Traffic's just an ongoing discussion, and I think Greg Early said it best at the Plan Commission. Its impact is like, I know they don't want to hear it, they don't want any more traffic, but it's a needle in a haystack. It's very, very minimal impact. As far as, the open space, Mike and I can appreciate that they've had open space for years and years and years. We'd love to be able to just tell them that, we can just leave it open space, but things change, and, Mike owns the property, and essentially, it's going to be something. It's going to have to be something. Sooner or later, it will be something. As far
Is
as
anybody living in the houses now?
I'm sorry?
Is anybody living in the houses now? Okay.
Yes. They're rented, yeah.
They're rented?
Sorry. As far as the number of units, when we first came to Darrell and John Nagy, we actually had 6 buildings and 12 units per building. We were looking to try and do 72 units. Darrell and John said that's not going to work. They wouldn't tell us exactly what was going to work. We came back a week and a half later at 60 units. They still wouldn't exactly tell us what was going to work, but 60 units, they said, is too dense, too much. Came back at 48 units. Still wouldn't tell us what was going to work. Actually, I think at that meeting, they kind of insinuated that R4 was probably the likely candidate and would, be something they could support. That's how we got to the 34 units. Essentially, reducing it by 6 units, what we would probably do to reduce it by 6 units is take the 2-story building in the center to the north, and we just create it, or turn it into a ranch building. That's not going to change the footprint at all. Essentially, the footprint wouldn't change one bit. The detention ponds up front, kind of a misnomer. They're not ponds. Nobody's going to drown in them. They're areas that are basically designed for detention and stormwater event required by the county engineer, such that all stormwater stays on our site and doesn't, go onto adjacent sites. They're going to be heavily landscaped with probably river rock and grasses and plants, and be beautiful. Nobody's going to drown in them. Darrell, can you put that plan that was on previously, showing the site, the aerial view.
This one?
Yeah. Can I borrow your pointer? I'm, pretty much envisioning, I would say, I gotta hold it down. All right, we're right here. Chances are, this whole entire corner, which it's all owned by the church except for one parcel right here. That guy, that owner, has approached Mike before, believes his land is worth commercial. He wants commercial money. He's pretty much not going to sell it till it's commercial money. We were at the end of the Plan Commission meeting about a month ago, approached by a member of the congregation stating that, and we subsequently met with him, stating that it will be sold commercially, he believes, within a year or two. So essentially, you've got Waterford Bank, the south of Waterford Bank, which if that's the southern line of development, essentially that's probably going to mean that the southern line of development over here is going to be right there. So essentially, your next transition might be office or something in here. Mike and I would hope, so we don't have a strip center backing up to our rentals, as opposed to, the whole thing being commercial. But essentially, this whole corner would probably be looked at as a PUD with more buffer, I would assume, on the property that Greg is assuming should be the buffer. If you actually were to take the whole site, all up in here, and include our parcel, and some developer were to develop the whole thing as a PUD, this would probably be multifamily in here, but with this much acreage, even in an R3, they could probably do 120 to 130 units. So, and most likely 3-story buildings, similar to like Chelsea Place or the normal type kind of multifamily that you're seeing. Essentially, the site coverage is at the maximum. It's at the 40%, primarily because they're ranch units, which lessens the impact on the neighbors. They're not 2-story, 3-story tall buildings. And as far as sprinkler system, I'm not really sure how that impacts, anything for Mike and I, or for the neighbors. With respect to the $1,200 a month rentability, they are very, very rentable. Both Mike and I have other projects. We have no concerns whatsoever. They actually will break even at about 60% occupancy, which they will probably be in the 90 to 95, 98% occupancy if they're like similar projects.
Can I ask a question? Do you plan to do everything in one fell swoop, not just build a building and rent it and then?
Oh, no. We'll get
build out the whole thing at once?
Yes, it's small enough that, yeah. Thank you.
I will give one last opportunity to anybody in the audience, otherwise we are going to close discussion and talk amongst ourselves. Going, gone. Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. You'll have the last word.
Beth Appleton, 3949 Pepperwood Court. We moved in here about 12 years ago and just thought we were in a great area. It breaks my heart to think that our property could go down, possibly would. What's going to happen with the renters when they possibly get somebody in there and they can't afford it, so they start having their friends come in to help them pay for the rent? Is any of that kind of thing going to be controlled? What's going to happen to our water pressure? What's going to happen to the sewage? What's going to happen to the natural water that's underground that we have our sprinkling system on? We have spent tons of money on our house and continue to do so, hoping that the value would come up. The values aren't coming up. We still all take pride in our property. We put the most into it that we can. Please, if we can, let's not do this. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Gentlemen. Major arguments, at least that I have heard, are discussions of lighting, traffic, property values, and I guess the concept of change. There have been some of the main things that I've heard which seem to have cropped up over and over again. Anybody want to tackle any one of those?
The traffic with the 34 units, as I said, was 272 trips per day. They reduce it down to R3, it would be 224 trips a day per unit. The applicant can reduce it now, if he wants to, down to a R3 without starting over, correct?
I believe so.
You can do it in the Board of Zoning Appeals. You can go down. You can't go up, but you can go down. So that would be up to him. I have a couple of things that I wanted to say. The attorney brought up the land use plan, Chapter 3, page 9 of the land use plan, the corridor, McCord Road corridor between Central and Sylvania. This area is now primarily residential in character, but there are considerations supporting the view that this area could and should be more commercial in nature in the future, but it isn't now. The previous land use plan and zoning code indicate that this area is and should continue to be a single-family residential area, which it is now. Now, in the event the church area were to turn into a commercial area, and the applicant is correct, this is called step-down zoning. If you could put a gas station on the corner where the church is, put office buildings where the ball field is, put a multi-family dwelling next, which is step-down zoning, it's fine. But it's sort of going backwards now. You don't know what's going to be in that area. You don't know what kind of buildings are going to be in that area. And also, presently, the land use plan is referring to residential area, not multifamily. So I think there's a conflict in what's being done and with the future land use plan. Street lighting, that's in the code. You can't shine on the neighbors. That's enough, unless someone has a question.
So your concern is that this might be in violation of the land use plan, if I've heard you correctly?
Well, it certainly sounds that way by putting multifamily in where it, right now, is supposed to be residential. Now, once again, as I said, if commercial were at the church and office buildings and then multifamily, that's fine. That's step-down zoning. That's exactly what you should do, and then you have residential. What's the...
So this might be the cart before the horse, is sort of your point.
Thank you. What is Mayberry is exactly that way. It's step-down zoning.
Anybody else have any comments? You look like you're ready to say something.
Well, I don't know where to start. Again, I think the traffic issue that keeps coming up, on a calculation, I don't know whether that number's 15,000 a day, 12.5, whatever it is, but let's assume it's higher than 2007, and maybe that's 20% higher. Let's just say, okay, 15,000. 200 additional trips a day is about 1%. So I don't think, it's going to be a significant traffic issue. Some of the other issues I certainly understand, and I know that it's already an issue for all of you trying to get out of there, and I'm certainly sensitive to that.
So we could acknowledge that while traffic is an issue within the small parameters of the extra trips, it's not going to...
Yeah, I don't think this one project is necessarily going to affect it a whole lot more than you unfortunately already are. And certainly that's an issue, and traffic is a problem. Again, it's not the charge of this board. We don't do traffic studies, we're not engineers, so we really can't address that a whole lot. I had lighting on there, which I think that there's certainly some things that can be done there. I don't think lighting is going to be an issue. The one thing that I've heard also, and though I'm very sensitive to this, I love my open space. I love having some land around me. We moved into our place 4 years ago, and we looked out back into the, there's the cornfield and the pheasants and the ducks and the geese and all that, and I love that stuff. Three months after we moved in, the for sale sign went on the 3-acre parcel across the road, and we have a home there now. Next to us was an open lot subdivision, and across the road from us was an open lot. In that 4 years, those homes have been built. And I don't. I understand. Let me finish, please. This is actually our discussion now. Progress and growth happens, and we may not always like that. I don't like that either. And yes, you're all right. It's single family. Okay, I get that. But the argument of I look out my backyard to an open field, unfortunately, as growth happens, we can't always control that. Unless we own the property, we can't necessarily control not having the use of that or that view anymore. So I'm certainly, sensitive to, you've been there 15, 20 years and you've always had that, but, I think you'd all agree that, around King and Central is certainly a whole different look than what it was 20 years ago. St. James, when that came in, that was woods too. Our community is growing. Unfortunately, at times that's going to impact us negatively, but I think we want to be part of a growing, vibrant community. Otherwise, our community is dying. So, I think we have to have proper balance. Totally agree with you. So, I think that's all I have.
I have just a couple comments on the traffic, and they can correct me maybe if I'm wrong, but if there is 800 homes in Farmbrook, it looks to me like they have 4 exits. So that's 200 units per exit, and we're looking at 34 units per one street. So it's a lot denser if you look at the street coming out of Farmbrook than will be this. And I do agree, I was at the site last night on Sparrow Hill at 5:30. Went to purposely do a left. It takes you a while, I'd say a couple minutes. And I drive a big truck, it's not easy. Then I drove across the street into one of the houses and made a left turn out of there. It is very busy. Huntington Bank is busy. But like I said, that's kind of a county issue. Being a county road, it's not a township road. And like I said, I do sympathize with the people in that respect. And I think we also have to look at what Greg Arnold is saying with this transitional area, because if you look across the street, there's 2 sites. And speaking with one of the homeowners over there, what's to stop me from trying to put in a couple apartments with him and the guy next to the bank to make the site even then, if you know what I mean. So we've opened up a can of worms here, is where's the new boundary and the transitional use going to be? He wants to be fair, and if he sees Mr. Hodgenecki making money off of some land, by golly, he wants to do the same thing. So that's kind of our job, and now the ultimate say, just so these people know, it comes down to the trustees, their vote. We just recommend to them what we think. We obviously listen to you guys and take those considerations forward. But the attorney is exactly correct in where is that transitional use line. So we have to be careful what we step into here, involving 2 more properties now instead of just west of McCord Road. We're actually kind of impacting the east side also. And there maybe is only 1.5 acres over there, but you could stuff in 12 apartments up or something, so those are.
The only couple things I would mention there, Tom, Bob, you mentioned it, the step-down zoning.
Sure.
You know, the line, the line is there at Waterford Bank on the east side. Okay, so if you draw the line, which I'm not sure we have to draw exact lines, but
No, sure.
the line across there would suggest that that could be commercial from the north end of this site up, going towards Sylvania. So you're right. I agree with you that, what's to stop them? Actually, there is a stopping point on this side, however. And the stopping point is right there heading into Pepperwood Court and into Farmbrook. So, there is a stopping point there. Over on the other side, you're probably right. Maybe that could go further down there if a bunch of people got together and decided to do that. But again, this is residential. Remember, this site's looking at residential. Those others are commercial.
Is Waterford is a PUD though, right? Not necessarily straight commercial zoning? Do you know, Mary?
I believe it was a PUD.
It is a PUD, yes.
And I believe there was a discussion at the time that it was approved that the zoning commission was currently constituted at that time, that commercial should not go any further than Waterford Bank. And there was also a recognition at the time that Waterford was built, that the people across the street would probably be looking at doing something with their property, because they were here at the time and pretty much said, down the line. And, that's the question of these three houses, not necessarily as we get into what's considered farmland. One of the questions that always, intrigues me about this is, we've always talked about, best possible use of land. And, it's one thing when people want houses and are protecting houses, but we have two homeowners here who my understanding is really don't want those houses anymore. They're being rented. They aren't houses that those people want to hang on to. So as homeowners and members of our community, they're coming and saying, we think this might be the next step for our house and our community, and a good, appropriate use of land. And yes, it does impact the neighbors. It's change, but, what also, I know we were facing that issue in Waterford was zoned because there was, I think, one house there, the owner was in California and had no intention of maintaining the house. So did you have a derelict house with a bunch of weeds, or did you have, a well-maintained commercial building? And I don't disagree with Mr. Arnold that, you're really looking at the whole corner, but we can't also second guess the person who has the house or the church at this point in time, based on information we know tonight. So it is a question of this piece of property tonight. Traffic, lighting, change, and is it the right density, I guess.
What is our role in determining the impact on property values?
Our particular role? It's among many considerations. You certainly don't want to hurt or negatively impact people, but, barring you're absolutely certain, it's just, it's a concern of the neighbors. What I was always, what is the best use of the land? What is the appropriate zoning? And we have homeowners who have asked for a change, saying it's not appropriate anymore.
I wonder if, does everybody know that whatever the board decides, it's just a recommendation to council, not final?
Still has to go through the trustees.
Also, will the trustees be making a decision.
Well, they have to get a recommendation from us first. So we have to decide tonight, unless there would be any reason to delay that decision. Right now, there's not even a motion. And then once we recommend it, it goes to the trustees.
Would it benefit us to contact the trustees by letter?
It depends on our action here tonight, whether you're happy with that or not. Oh. How do we feel about, there was a suggestion of the R4 versus R3. That is certainly not our determination. Does 4 units impact our decision? 4?
6.
6 units.
If I'm not mistaken, the footprint of the project doesn't change at all. It simply reduces one of the 2 stories down, is that correct?
Doesn't change one thing.
Doesn't change one thing.
So
Looks the same.
really, we're not changing.
6 more cars, maybe 12 if they have 2 cars.
Probably.
Two-story building versus a one-story.
Yeah. But the 2-story doesn't back up against any houses.
Correct.
I'll be looking.
Yeah, but the argument's density, not the 2-story. So, again, if you're looking at the basic top-down view of the footprint and the layout of the whole property, yes, it does reduce it from 2-story to 1, but it seems like the argument more is the density, not the argument of, hey, we don't want the 2-story. And, if somebody's building a single-story home there, or a residential home to build a 2-story house, why is that different?
Right. We're surrounded by 2-story homes.
Yeah.
There's a ranch right next door.
So they're mixed houses. Some are 2-story, some are single-story. Like my neighborhood.
It does change the footprint. If they eliminate 6 units, they just choose to do the 2 stories. If they eliminate the 4 off the back, your footprint is farther away from people in Farmbrook. And if they take 2 units off McCord Road, they get the retention ponds away from McCord Road. So dropping 6 units drastically does alter the footprint. It's just how you choose to drop those 6 units.
But the ponds really aren't ponds.
But I understand, but we're saying it does change the footprint. By taking the 4 off the back, up against the turnaround, and the 2 off McCord Road.
But I don't
That's
think-
6 units, and that changes the footprint.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that was the option that was going to.
There is an option,
happen
though.
Should there be the reduction?
There is, but once we do the zone, it's their plan, you know what I mean?
I understand.
I know.
That says there is no option, but there is.
There is, but that, like I say, that's the developer's hands.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And we keep looking at the best usage, and step down. We're comparing Sylvania McCord to Central Avenue. That's like comparing to Toledo to New York.
This probably isn't going to be a real popular comment, but Tom mentioned it earlier, and I'm not trying to pick here, but you've got 800 homes in a subdivision there with 4 exits. So a lot of the complaints of the traffic, they really are created by the very place that you live in and love. And I don't know how you can change that a lot. And yes, there's a lot of business and cut through traffic, but do we want to stop growth in the township? How are we going to stop that?
You're adding to the cut through.
Like-
Can I say one thing? It's the left turns. Say you got 260 a day, say 50 of them takes left turns. Try taking a left from Sparrow, imagine somebody else taking a left turn. Because it's not a big gap when you make the left turn. That's where you're going to have potential accidents, problems. That's where I see it. I don't know, going another way probably doesn't make a whole lot of difference, so it takes away another gap, but yeah.
And I would ask you to revisit what Mr. Sabo said about you're going backwards instead of waiting to see what happens at the corner. If he would repeat what he read.
But the other properties aren't up for a zone change at this point. I think what Mary said was dead on. We have to look at this property at this time.
Because I'm sure there was arguments, Farmbrook went in 1989, and I'm sure there was similar, I don't look at the records or anything, but there was probably a similar argument for the 2 and 3 acre lot owners on McCord Road saying, we don't want a subdivision in our backyard. Guess what? Subdivision's in their backyard. They chose, I think one of these was an elderly lady, couldn't maintain the property anymore, sold it. I don't know the circumstance with the other one. But these are large lots that were, dense behind them, traffic increased for them. So, that's the nature of the beast. Out by us in the country, there's houses coming. Do we like it? No. Do we like roundabouts? No. It's changed, but it does happen. I do sympathize. I fought against apartments coming out our way in a bankrupt subdivision, and that was with a 40-acre farm field in between. So we do understand your concerns, but we also have to look out for an investor who bought one of these homes in 1999 and the other in 2005. This is not something he just did yesterday, went home, drew up a plan, and said, I think I'm going to throw these apartments in here. This has obviously been planned for a while. If you go on Arius and you look when the property acquisitions happened, you can kind of see what was coming. And does everyone do that? No, but before the meeting, can we prepare ourselves and do a little homework and figure out, when these things happen, how much they paid, and so on. So he's got some substantial money wrapped up in essentially 4 acres. Could he split it into 2-acre parcels and put a single-family home back on there? Maybe, but he's not going to make the return on his investment. So.
But it's our return on our investment, that he's affecting. Now, Tom, you said you were turning on to Sparrow Hill off of McCord. You were headed north, correct?
When I come from Sylvania Avenue, turned on to Sparrow Hills, made the roundabout.
You turned right.
I turned right, but then when I left, I obviously made a left off of
If you
Sparrow.
were going north on McCord and you saw the little turning lane they got there,
Yep.
is probably this route is shorter than this room. You have to literally jut over.
Sure.
If you don't, you got somebody climbing right up your hind end and laying on the horn telling you why are you slowing down. Well, I got to the turn lane and it's 2 cars long. That's all it is. Now, that's right now. With future stuff going on at the end of McCord, this on top of it, you're just adding more to a not well-designed McCord Road.
That goes right back to what I said earlier about future. Are more of these complexes going to go up on McCord Road? As it is right now, most of McCord Road is a 2-lane road. Yeah, we've gotten a turn lane in certain areas, but the houses are close enough to the street now that how are you going to, there's not enough room for you guys to make McCord Road a 3-lane road. All the way up and down. If you build more complexes, like if you allow this complex to go in, then who's going to say, how are you going to turn down another developer that's going to come in the future and say, I want to build another complex here? And it's going to keep snowballing all the way down until there's no room on McCord to put a 3-lane road. There's no room.
Can I ask the developers a question?
Yeah,
Is there a plan B as far as any other, R3, A3, whatever, not necessarily. Like you said, the footprint, obviously, if you're going to reduce it, you're going to get rid of the 2-story. So that to me doesn't change a whole lot.
Correct. Like I stated earlier, we started at 72 units and 34 is, to me, that's very light and medium density. I have a project in Maumee that's got 66 units on 2 acres, So it's getting to the edge of whether or not, it would be a viable project or not, I don't see the 6 units doing anything. It's not going to impact traffic, not going to change anything in the way of aesthetics or appearance of the project. Probably going to make it look worse because all the roof lines are just going to be straight. There's going to be no breakup in roof lines. When we met with Greg the other day and he proposed, 6 less units, we just couldn't comprehend what the gain was, what they were gaining. And I'd like Greg to know, basically, that's less money, that we can put into landscaping and screening and fences to make sure that they don't look at the units, So, we don't see 28 units as changing anything, and it does make the project worse.
If I could just, since the...
one last comment. Mr. Arnold?
My last comment is directed to the whole board, but Tom, you raised the point about looking at what the developer paid for the properties in 95 and whatever the other year was, 2002 maybe. But 2 points in that regard. One, there are multiples of that in homes that surround it that also have a concern about value. And as page 1 of my booklet to you says, the purpose of the zoning resolution is the protection of the residents. And every resident here tonight voiced opposition. There were no residents that voiced approval. So please keep that in mind.
A question for Daryl.
Sure.
Not that this is where we're going, but just in case I don't know the answer. If people wanted to think on this a little bit longer, is there any impact of deferring the decision to the next meeting? Or doesn't make anybody have to start all over? Or?
No, we can get to the next meeting.
I know it's hard for you to wait 30 days, but I mean, there's no legal impact to start over that doesn't kick any timeline?
No, this isn't set for any trustee meeting yet until after tonight's meeting.
After hearing what I've heard tonight, I think that it might be in our interest to take a little time and take a closer look at it and defer this to the next meeting.
We have one person who would like to just soak it all in and think a little bit more.
I've got some concerns about the density, about the traffic, and about what the people in the neighborhood have said.
Mr. Creech, thoughts?
It doesn't matter to me. I mean,
Okay,
I was there yesterday for a while looking at it.
Okay. Gentlemen?
Doesn't matter. I've researched it and looked at the property. Either way, so.
I'm sort of where I'm at, either way. We either need a motion to vote on this, or we need a motion to defer it to the next meeting. But I think if we do that, we need to go into it with the idea that we're going to think about it, that we have heard the arguments, and we come back prepared to make a decision. Not go through this process again, unless there's any absolutely vital new information.
I would concur with
I'm not going to keep putting this off. I mean, it's not fair to them, and I don't want to rush into anything that people are uncomfortable with it. I'm sort of either way. I can make a decision tonight, but I would like everybody to feel comfortable with the decision that's made.
I think it's a nice project. It's a great-looking project, but I'm going to move to defer this to the next meeting.
Can I make one point?
Sure.
We already have met with the neighbors. We had a great meeting with the neighbors. Not sure, if you want us to meet with them again, but...
No, I don't think it's a matter of you doing anything else. I think it's just a matter of, this is really the first time that we've all heard, and I think, Mr. Arnold's point is correct, doing what's best for the community. I mean, all people have made points. We may disagree that there's going to be a lot of traffic, or that lighting's going to be an issue, or that the community is changing, and sometimes you have to live with that, but certainly it will have an impact on probably a lot of people. I mean, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, it will affect Farmbrook, it will affect that whole corner. What happens, whether irrespective of what the church, I mean, the church has been there since 1960s that I know of. You know, and I know it has discussed at different times, but has always chosen to stay. So, I mean, I think it is, we should be thoughtful, but come back prepared to make a decision. I mean, I'm not, and we don't have to necessarily hear everybody say the same things over again.
Sure.
But if you want to reflect more than a half an hour, I mean, decisions made in haste. We have a motion to defer. Do I have a second? Nobody else wants to defer? Okay, that motion dies. Do we have a motion to approve the zone change?
Motion.
We have a motion to approve the zone change. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any additional comment or discussion? Yes, no? Hearing none, call the roll.
Mr. Keaton?
Yes.
Mr. Craigie?
Yes.
Mr. Casper?
Yes.
Mrs. Himmeline?
Yes.
Did I get everybody? I did, yeah. Mr. Epstein?
Yes.
Motion carries. And we'll now go to the trustees for further review and decision.
And that should be on March 5th. That's a 4 o'clock meeting.
Is there any additional items that need to be brought before the commission? Hearing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn, I'll second that.
Mr. Casper?
Yes.
Mrs. Himmeline?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Epstein?
Yes.
Mr. Craigie?
Yes.
See you guys next month.
Thank you.